presentation on incidents, complaints, and mortality reviews. I just want to take a second to welcome everybody today. My name is Sarah Van Sickle. I am the Quality and Training Manager for Liberty for the Bureau of Disability Services. I'm joined today by Kim Culley, the Quality Assurance Director for the Bureau of Disability Services, and Shelley Thomas, Outcomes Management Director for the Bureau of Disability Services. We'd like to start today with just a few housekeeping reminders. We're going to remind everybody to use the chat for immediate technical issues and to answer any questions that may be asked throughout the presentation. You can use the Q&A button to ask any questions that you may want to ask. There is closed captioning. You just need to click the closed caption button to see the live transcription. Within 24 hours after the close of the presentation today, you will receive an email that's going to serve as the confirmation that you attended, and then we ask that you do please complete the evaluation that will be part of that follow-up email. This recording will be uploaded to the FSSA YouTube channel after the live session has been conducted. For those expecting today's training to cover provider-owned and controlled settings, you are signed into the correct training. The subject was changed to incident reporting, complaints, and mortality reviews. We wanted to cover these topics as a refresher for some and as an introduction to our providers currently working with the aged and disabled waiver and the traumatic brain injury waiver within the Division of Aging, as these will transition to the Bureau of Disability Services on July 1st, 2024. Today's agenda is going to include an overview of incident reporting, what information is reported, and the importance of incident reporting and data that they provide, what the complaint process is, what to expect when a complaint is filed, and how to file a complaint within the Bureau of Disability Services, the importance of mortality review process, what information is collected, and what outcomes to expect from the mortality review process. Also, how incident reports, complaints, and mortality reviews work to improve the services and supports that are provided to individuals receiving HCBS services. The Bureau of Disability Services currently reviews incident reports for the following BDS funding sources: the CIH waiver, the Family Support Waiver, Supervised Group Living, the LPI CFIDD, and State Line. Additionally, Liberty of Indiana currently reviews incident reports for the traumatic brain injury waiver and the aged and disabled waiver under the Division of Aging. BDS incident reports are processed in accordance with Indiana Administrative Code 460 IAC 6-9-5 and the Incident Reporting and Management Policy, which outlines the requirements for the incident reporting for BDS programs. Incident reports for the aged and disabled and traumatic brain injury waivers are processed in accordance with Indiana Administrative Code 455 IAC 2-8-2 and the approved waiver documents. 460 IAC 6-9-5 BDS policy and the approved HCBS waivers provide a list of incident types that are required to be reported. The list includes, but is not limited to, abuse, neglect, and exploitation, death of an individual, an unsafe delivery site, a fire that meets specific criteria, elopement, suspected or actual criminal activity by an individual or employee of a provider, an event with the potential to cause significant harm or injury requiring medical intervention, admission to a nursing facility, injury of unknown origin, a significant injury, an injury caused while being restrained, a medication error that meets specific criteria, inadequate staff support with the potential for significant harm or death, inadequate medical support, use of a PRN medication related to individual behavior, and an unapproved transition. Please reference the code, the BDS incident reporting policy, and approved CIH and FSW waiver for a complete list. Those links will be provided at the end of this presentation. 455 IAC 2-8-2 and the approved HCBS waivers provide a list of incident types that are required to be reported for the aged and disabled and traumatic injury waivers. This list includes but is not limited to abuse, neglect, or exploitation, the death of an individual, environmental issues that compromise the health and safety of an individual, criminal activity, injuries of unknown origin, suicidal ideation or attempt, admission to a nursing facility, a significant injury, an injury from the use of a restraint, police involvement when there is an arrest, a missing person, inadequate staff with the potential for endangering the health and welfare of an individual. Please reference the code and the approved HCBS waivers for a complete list. And we will also be sharing that link at the end of this presentation. All providers, including employees or contracted agents and case or care managers, are mandated reporters. This means when the provider and or the case or care manager becomes aware of a reportable incident, the incident must be submitted to the state via the online incident reporting tool within the specified timeframe. If a provider or case care manager learns of an incident that has not been reported by the responsible party, the provider or case and care manager should submit the incident report to the state using the state reporting system. In addition to reporting an incident through the state system, the reporting entity must notify the individual's team by forwarding the PDF file of the incident report. If the individual is on the A&D waiver or the TBI waiver, the information required to be shared is dependent on the type of incident. Please reference 455 IAC-2-8-1 and 455 IAC 2-8-2 for guidance. BEADS programs require the initial report regarding an incident be submitted to the state via the online incident reporting tool within 24 hours of the occurrence of the incident or someone becoming aware of the incident. For TBI and A&D waiver, incidents involving an allegation or suspicion of abuse, neglect, exploitation, or death of an individual must be submitted to the state via the online incident reporting tool within 24 hours of the incident or knowledge of the incident. All other incident types must be submitted within 48 hours of the time the incident occurred or becoming aware of the incident. Incident reports must be submitted in the state's online incident reporting tool. If the online system is down, please email the IR team to notify them of the delay. The reporting person should enter as much detail as possible to include a comprehensive description of the incident, a description of the circumstances and activities occurring immediately prior to the incident, a description of any injuries sustained during the incident, a description of both the immediate actions that have been taken and actions that are planned but not yet implemented, and a list of each person, first name, last initial, involved in the incident, with a description of the role and staff title, if applicable, of each person. Once the incident report is received through the online system, BEADS processes it within 24 hours of receipt. Incident reports are processed 7 days a week, 365 days a year. An incident may be closed by BEADS upon initial receipt if all needed information is provided and the narrative paints a clear story of what happened. If the incident is not closed during the initial processing, BEADS will send an email notification to the person responsible for incident follow-up reporting. The entity responsible for incident follow-up is the individual's care or case manager when receiving waiver-funded services, the residential providers when receiving supervised group living or other ICF IDD services, and the BEAD service coordinator when receiving other services such as nursing facilities. The entity responsible for submitting the follow-up report will submit an incident follow-up report via the online incident reporting tool within 7 days of the date of the initial incident report and every 7 days thereafter until the incident is resolved to the satisfaction of BEADS. Follow-up incident reports are processed by BEADS within 3 days of receipt. Follow-up incident reports are also processed 7 days a week, 365 days a year. While an entity is identified as responsible for submitting the follow-up report, the individual's team is responsible for addressing and responding to the needs of the individual and requests for information, including documentation. Something different you may have noticed is that some follow-up emails include a note that reads, "The follow-up has been received and is currently under review. Once it is determined how to proceed, another email will be sent out." This serves as notice that an additional review is being completed by BEADS for that particular incident report. Filing an additional IR follow-up is not needed until you receive communication back. This was implemented because on occasion, incident reports are received that require a higher level of approval needed for closure. The provider may not need to submit a follow-up until additional communication is received from BEADS. At any point during the processing of an incident, it may be deemed a critical incident. A critical incident is an actual or alleged event that jeopardizes the health, safety, or welfare of the individual receiving services. This includes cases of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, as well as significant injury. The critical part of an incident can be closed without the entire incident being closed. When the critical status remains open, follow-up is required within 3 days to address those immediate health and safety needs. Most commonly, confirming APS or DCS notification, staff suspension, and investigation initiation. Please note that BEADS refers to these types of incidents as critical, and A&D and TBI use the word sentinel. For the A&D and TBI waivers, on average, 1,300 initial incident reports per month are received. In addition, 450 follow-up reports are processed. 140 initial incidents are classified as sentinel, and about 23% or 300 incident reports filed per month are non-reportable. BEADS receives on average 6,000 initial incident reports per month and 2,500 follow-up reports. 1,100 initial incidents are classified as critical. About 20% or 1,200 incident reports filed per month are non-reportable. This data does not include individuals on the TBI or A&D waivers. Let's talk about non-reportable incidents and what that means. On average, about 20% of the submitted incident reports for SGL, ICF-IDD, CIH, FS, and nursing facilities within the BEADS programs do not meet the reportable incident criteria outlined in the Administrative Code, BEADS policy, and the CIH and FS waivers. While incidents may meet the reportable criteria for these incident types, the most non-reportable incidents for BEADS programs fall into these categories: medical condition, a change in or a decline, aggression to housemate or peer, a fall, aggression to staff, or other. Let's look at these in a little more detail. Let's start with the question, when would a change in medical condition or a medical decline be non-reportable? The answer is, when treatment is received at an urgent care center, it is typically not reportable. However, even in these cases, the incidents become reportable when there is police involvement, an unexpected hospital visit or admission, or with injuries determined to be critical. The next category, where a high rate of incidents submitted do not meet reportable criteria, involve aggression to housemates and peers. So when would aggression to a housemate or peer be non-reportable? Aggression towards a housemate or peer is not typically a reportable incident for individuals supported within the FS and CIH waiver. However, in these cases, the incidents become reportable when there is police involvement, when there is an unexpected hospital visit or admission as a result of the incident, or when injuries sustained during the incident are determined to be critical. For individuals utilizing SGL or LPICFIDD services, all incidents of aggression towards a housemate and peer are reportable. Now let's look at falls. When would a fall be non-reportable? Based on 460 IAC 6-9-5 and BEADS IR reporting policy, a fall that results in no injuries is considered non-reportable. A fall becomes a reportable incident when an injury is sustained. So if the individual sustains any injury regardless of severity, a fall is considered reportable and an incident report should be submitted. It is important to note that an area of redness is not considered an injury for reporting purposes. Next, let's review aggression to staff in regards to reportability. When would aggression to staff be non-reportable? Aggression to staff is typically not a reportable incident. However, like the previously discussed categories, even in these cases, the incidents become reportable when there is police involvement, when an unexpected hospital visit or admission, or with injuries that are determined to be critical. The last category of non-reportable incidents we will review today is the category of other. Other is a category used when an incident is reported and there is not a defined coding category the incident details fit into. Examples of incidents coded as other include things like an individual refusing to attend an appointment or complete a personal hygiene task or refusing staff. It's important to note as we wrap up the discussion on the most frequent non-reportable incidents that as these incidents occur, those events that do not meet reportable criteria as outlined in Indiana Administrative Code should still be documented through internal documentation and addressed as needed with the individualized support team. Now that we've finished talking about non-reportable categories, let's talk about a few interesting facts. Currently, there is a team of 6 incident review analysts who process incident reports. These incident review analysts all possess a minimum of a bachelor's degree in social service discipline and/or criminal justice, along with ongoing training specific to their job responsibilities. 3 of the 6 team members have been involved in analyzing incident reports for over 5 years, and the entire team receives regular, ongoing supervision from clinically trained supervisors. The team utilizes a variety of specialized resources to ensure the accuracy and consistency of these incident reviews. BEADS implements a quality assurance plan to measure consistency in processing. Quality monitoring efforts are ongoing to ensure timely, accurate, and consistent processing of every incident report received. To achieve this, a percentage of each analyst's work is reviewed by a supervisor monthly to check for accuracy, and feedback is provided as needed. If an analyst is not reaching the required benchmark, additional training and oversight will occur. Additionally, to assist the analyst in processing, each has been assigned a grouping of BEADS district as their primary responsibility. This allows the analyst to become familiar with individuals and follow incident patterns. We believe this has increased our awareness of individuals and supports a robust review process. Residential providers have the ability to run incident data reports through the Apricot Liberty Track system for individuals they support. BEADS waivers case managers companies also have the ability to do this. Reports can be run by incident number, individual name, date, or type of incident. A provider can get a full list of all incident reports and their status by date range. The report can be exported into an Excel document. For more information on how to do this, you can get step-by-step instructions in My Shared Files under the Liberty Tracks Provider Documentation section. Additional information on the reporting of incidents can be obtained using the links provided at the end of this presentation. Now, let's discuss complaints. The Bureau of Disability Services receives complaints regarding alleged allegations of noncompliance within the 460 IAC 6. As stated in Section 6-7-2, BEADS shall monitor compliance with the requirements of the code upon receiving a complaint or report alleging a provider's non-compliance with the requirements of the article. The compliance monitoring can be done by requesting and obtaining information from the provider, site inspections, meeting with an individual or their legal representatives as applicable, a review of the provider records and the records of the individual, and can conduct follow-up inspections as is reasonably necessary to determine compliance after BEADS has requested a corrective action plan. The Division of Aging receives complaints regarding allegations of noncompliance within 455 IAC 2, as stated in Section 2-6-4. There are guidelines for monitoring noncompliance of regulations and complaints. DDARs will monitor upon receiving a complaint or a report alleging a provider's noncompliance with the requirements of the article. DDAR's monitoring can be done by requesting and obtaining information from the provider, on-site inspections, meeting with an individual or their legal representative as applicable, review of provider records and the records of an individual, and can conduct follow-up inspections as is reasonably necessary to determine compliance after DDARS has requested a corrective action plan. Anyone with a concern can file a complaint regarding any witnessed or suspected violations. However, the individualized support team should always work together to resolve any issues in addition to filing any complaint. Complaints can be filed online, by phone, or by sending an email to the BEADS help desk. This information is provided on this slide as well as at the end of the presentation. Complaints can also be initiated based on information obtained during a mortality review, an incident report review, or by any BEADS employee with a concern. Let's talk about what happens once a complaint is received. Upon receipt of the complaint, a triage process begins and the complaint receives a classification. The classifications are exploration, meaning there is not enough information to determine if a complaint is valid or if the full investigation is warranted. For an example, an allegation that staff are smoking marijuana in their cars and leaving the beer bottles in the yard. There could also be pending team resolution, where the case meets one or more of the following criteria. The PCISP documents one set of expectations while the individual or the guardian believes or wants something else to occur. An example of this is when an individual states they should have their hearing aids checked monthly and the PCISP states bi-monthly. Also, the team is not working together to support the individual, or it could be pending team resolution if the team has not been involved in addressing an issue that is within their ability of the team to address. A complaint can be classified as critical when an incident threat on the health, rights, or welfare of an individual. For example, termination of services without proper notice, or an allegation that a provider is not filing BEADS reports when they are required to do so, or alleged neglect by not taking an individual to doctor's appointments, fraudulent billing, fraudulent documentation, termination of services, and training issues. An urgent classification is having an immediate or direct serious adverse effect on the health, rights, or welfare of an individual. For example, allegations of abuse and the staff have not been suspended, or a choking incident in which the individual passed away, or some type of media involvement. The last classification could be invalid, which means the complaint does not meet criteria. For example, this could be an issue with someone's SNAP benefits, or it is a non-waiver setting. For all classifications except invalid, a quality reviewer is assigned to investigate. Depending on the classification and the allegation, a site visit may be completed. For an urgent complaint, it will occur within 1 business day, and for a critical complaint, it will occur within 2 business days. The investigation involves a phone call to the complainant within 1 business day of the receipt, a request for and review of documents, an interview with the individual, and phone calls to involved parties. If during the course of the investigation, it is determined that other individuals could be affected, they can be added to the complaint and the scope of the investigation can increase. Also, if during the course of the investigation, other violations of 460 code are suspected, they can be added to the complaint. A provider is given 3 days to submit the initial requested documents. If not submitted, a second request will be made. The provider is then given 1 business day to comply with the request. If that deadline is not met, the BEADS Quality Assurance Director is notified regarding noncompliance. For urgent and critical complaints, once all information has been collected, a complaint investigation summary is written to include a list of all documents reviewed, all people talked with, and a summary of findings. All complaint investigation summaries go through an extensive review prior to being finalized. They are peer reviewed by another quality reviewer, reviewed by a manager, and then reviewed by the BEADS Quality Assurance Department. If a complaint investigation summary is issued with found allegations, a corrective action plan is issued by BEADS. A provider must either accept the corrective action plan as written or submit an alternative corrective action plan. If an alternative corrective action plan is submitted, BEADS will provide feedback and determine if the plan is accepted or not. All corrective action plans will have a required implementation date. A provider typically has 30 days to implement a CAP. Failure to submit the required documents showing successful implementation of the corrective action plan will result in a second verification attempt 20 business days later. A provider can request an extension by submitting a request identifying the reason the CAP cannot be implemented timely and the date that they believe it can be completed. CAPs are verified in Liberty Tracks. If a CAP is deemed not implemented, providers are given an explanation as to why it was not implemented. This information can be found in Liberty Tracks. Failure to implement a CAP after the second verification could result in sanctions against the provider. If a CAP has any financial reimbursement associated with it, then a provider will have an option to appeal the CAP. These instructions on how to do that will be included in the complaint investigation summary. All information related to complaints is housed in Liberty Tracks. Providers receive a link to access a document request and should upload requested documents into Liberty Tracks. They also receive a link when the CI summary is complete and need to use that link to accept corrective action plans or submit an alternative plan. All communication regarding complaints is initiated through Liberty Tracks. Emails sent to providers come from Apricot Software. Providers are each given a single login for Liberty Tracks. Larger providers can request a second login. Providers are encouraged to set up a generic email account to receive notifications so multiple staff can access the account and continued access can occur if a staff person leaves. Information specific to an individual that is housed in Liberty Tracks is HIPAA protected information and should be treated as confidential. Beginning July 1st, 2024, the Bureau of Disability Services will investigate complaints for individuals who are on the TBI waiver and the Health and Wellness waiver. Also beginning July 1st, 2024, BEADS will process complaints for these individuals in a manner similar to the process just described. Currently, complaints can be called in to the Division of Aging at 888-673-0002. BEADS completes mortality reviews in accordance with 460 IAC 6-25-10. Investigation of death and DDAR's policy for mortality review dated 5/30/2021. A provider of residential HAB or structured family caregiving under the CIH waiver is required to complete an investigation into the death of an individual. If there is no residential provider or the individual participates in the family support waiver, then the provider of case management services is required to conduct the investigation. SGL and LPICF IDD providers are required to submit an investigation report. In addition to an internal investigation being completed by the provider, BEADS completes a review of all deaths. Additional information will be provided in the coming months regarding processes on the TBI and health and wellness waivers. The BEADS mortality investigation begins with a triage system that includes sending the provider an others at risk or OAR questionnaire to complete. This is sent when the individual lives with others or shares staff. The OAR is scored based on the answers received and is used as part of the triage process to determine if others are at risk. There is one question on the OAR for facilities and a similar question on the community OAR that is frequently answered incorrectly and requires follow-up. Question 1 asks, within 5 days prior to the hospitalization or placement in a hospice setting or nursing facility in which the individual's death occurred, did staff observe the individual experiencing a medical emergency, such as loss of consciousness, choking, breathing difficulties, no or slow pulse, traumatic injury, excessive bleeding, etc.? This question is frequently answered no. We believe it is answered incorrectly because the time period is not understood. For question 1 of the OAR, please keep in mind when answering that the time frame refers to the 5 days immediately prior to the admission to the hospital when the individual passed away. For example, staff finds an individual unresponsive and not breathing in his bed, calls 911, CPR is started, EMS arrives and continues CPR, transports the individual to the hospital. The individual is resuscitated and placed on a vent, but passes away 2 days later. The answer to this example would be yes. Another example might be an individual is not acting like himself. They might be congested, and the doctor is called and suggests that the individual be taken to the emergency room. Once at the emergency room, the individual is admitted to the hospital and passes away 4 days later. In this example, the answer would be no. Although the individual needed to go to the emergency room, he was breathing and alert, but not experiencing a medical emergency. Besides the OAR, the triage process includes a review of incident reports, a quick review of case notes, and the PCISP or ISP. If there are concerns the environment may pose a risk to others, BEADS can implement an expedited review. This consists of a BEADS representative doing an on-site visit, most likely to where the deceased individual lived, and collecting information to include documents and interviewing staff. For all deaths, a provider or case management company will receive a request for documents within 3 days of the receipt of the death of person incident report. The document request is sent through Liberty Tracks. The documentation request will vary depending on the funding source, the circumstances surrounding the individual's death, and the reported cause of death. Individuals being supported through the Family Supports Waiver will typically require minimal documents. A provider shall submit the documents within 30 days. If they are not submitted by the 20th day, the provider will be sent a reminder. They will be sent an additional reminder at the 25-day mark. And if the documents are not received after 30 days, the BEADS Quality Assurance Director is notified regarding noncompliance. Once documents are provided, the Mortality Review Nurse Investigator conducts their review. The Mortality Review Nurse Investigator is the person responsible for the capture of the summary report in response to review of the information obtained. Case provider notes, incident reports, medication review, coroner reports, habilitation plans, etc., that are provided inside of Liberty Tracks. At the conclusion of the mortality review, nurse's investigation review, the review and its findings are discussed with beads. An additional review of the case may be completed by a physician provided by beads if deemed necessary by the mortality review triage team. The team makes a recommendation for the next steps, which will be shared with the Mortality Review Committee. The MRC meets once a month and is made up of a variety of stakeholders. The members of the MRC are appointed by beads. The mortality review follow-up process was created to hold providers accountable for those issues or opportunities for improvement found during the mortality review. Recognizing that some issues are more critical than others, a tier process was developed. Tier 2 and Tier 3 letters will only be issued for waivers. A corrective action plan is included in the Tier 2 and 3 levels, as these are issues identified as potentially affecting the individual's health and/or contributing to the death, but not rising to the level of a complaint. If an issue is identified that warrants a complaint, then the appropriate personnel will be notified to initiate the complaint. Tier 2 and Tier 3 letters will be sent to BEAD's Quality Assurance Director for review prior to being sent to the provider. SGL or LPICF IDD mortality cases that are identified with issues that potentially affected the individual's health and/or contributed to the death will be referred to the IDOH for review. Let's explore the tier levels with some examples. Mortality Review Tier 1 are those issues or opportunities for improvement identified in the scope of the mortality review, which are minor and didn't affect the health of the individual or was related to the death. For example, the individual's adaptive equipment was not included in the PCISP, or the DSPs did not document for every shift worked. A Tier 1 designation will include recommendations or opportunities for improvement with no follow-up. Issues, opportunities for improvement will be noted in the closure letter and brought to the provider's attention. No other follow-up would be required. Mortality Review Tier 2 are issues or opportunities for improvement identified in the scope of the mortality review, which may have affected the health of the individual, but was not related to or caused the death. Also, this would be something organization-wide that needs to be addressed. For example, an individual died of cardiac arrest, but investigations revealed an antibiotic prescribed 3 days prior was not on the MAR and had not been filled at the pharmacy. The provider was responsible for all medication-related issues. The PCISP identifies the individual was at risk for choking, and they were prescribed a mechanical soft diet. It was discovered during the investigation that the diet was not being followed by staff and the individual was not given meat that was cut into pieces but not ground. The individual died of myocardial infarction, so the issue did not cause or contribute to the death. A Tier 2 designation will include recommendations or opportunities for improvements with CAP and follow-up by BEADS and/or the MRC. The report letter will be sent to the provider identifying the findings of the mortality review and notification that they need to submit a corrective action plan within 30 days to address the issues. Once the CAP is received, the mortality review triage team will review, and if sufficient, the provider will be notified that it has been accepted, and they will then have 30 calendar days to submit proof of implementation. If the CAP has not been received and verified in the 30 calendar days, a second letter will be sent notifying the provider that they have 20 calendar days to submit proof of implementation. After proof received and verified, a closure letter will be sent acknowledging follow-up processes were completed. If the CAP is not completed, further action will be taken by BEADS. Recommendations and opportunities for improvement may also be included in a Tier 2 follow-up, but they would not require the provider to take any action. In the letter sent to the provider, these will be differentiated from the issues requiring a cap. Mortality Review Tier 3 are those issues and opportunities for improvement identified during the scope of the mortality review that may have contributed to or caused the individual's death. For example, an individual was found unresponsive. Staff called their supervisor for permission to call 911 and the individual passed away. Another example would be an individual was identified as a choking risk, choked, and it was found that the choking risk plan was not followed by the staff. A Tier 3 designation will include recommendations and opportunities for improvement with CAP and follow-up by BEADS and/or the Mortality Review Committee. The report letter will be sent to the provider, identifying the findings of the mortality review, including issues and opportunities for improvement. A CAP developed by the MRTT will be included, which the provider will be expected to implement. Providers will need to submit proof of implementation of corrective action plan within 30 calendar days. If the CAP has not been received and verified within 30 calendar days, a second letter will be sent notifying the provider they have 20 calendar days to submit proof of implementation. After the proof received and verified, a closure letter will be sent acknowledging the follow-up process was completed. If the CAP is not completed, further action will be taken by BEADS. Recommendations and opportunities for improvement may also be included in a Tier 3 follow-up, but they would not be required for the provider to take any action. In the letter sent to the provider, these will be differentiated from the issues requiring a corrective action plan. Beginning July 1st, 2024, the Bureau of Disability Services will investigate mortalities for individuals who were in the TBI and the health waiver and the health and wellness waivers. BEADS will process mortalities for these individuals in a similar manner to the process just described. The Bureau of Disability Services has been working to integrate all resources available when conducting investigations and processing incident reports. While each activity of incident processing, complaint investigation, and mortality review are conducted by different trained professionals, they frequently collaborate to ensure consistency. They consult on providers and review the effectiveness of previous corrective action plans and use that information when writing corrective action plans. The intent of this is to support providers in looking at their processes and making modifications so that they can grow their programs. In addition to looking at issues at the provider level, BEADS looks at issues related to the individual. This is done at the monthly Incident Management Review Committee. The IMRC is an internal committee that reviews all individuals who have had 4 or more critical IRs in the past 365 days. Since this is a large amount of data, the IMRC breaks the data out by BEADS district. This makes the data set smaller and allows information to be shared with each district, the district managers, and the district field supervisors. Each meeting reviews a list of individuals who have experienced 4 or more critical incidents in a 12-month period, broken out by month and incident type. The data is reviewed for peaks and valleys and numbers and reviewed for clusters. Individuals identified as having a peak and valley or cluster receive a deeper review. The deeper reviews consist of reading individual incident reports looking for common themes, such as time of day, staff involved, incident types. The result of that deeper review are discussed in greater detail. A peak and valley is defined as multiple months, 3 or more, where a specific incident type of 3 or more is present and then is not present for multiple months, 3 or more. A cluster is defined as 5 or more same or similarly related types of incidents occurring in a 3-month period. The committee does allow for some variance to these definitions if a deeper review of the data seems warranted based on the knowledge from information related to complaints and mortalities. In addition to looking at individuals, BEADS also reviews incident data for providers and discussing any concerns during the committee meeting. Follow-up to the Incident Management Review Committee can come in many forms. Relevant resources can be shared with the individual. For example, someone who is frequently the target of domestic abuse might be sent information on local crisis groups. Information can be shared with a provider. For example, there is an individual who is struggling with trust from previous abuse. The provider may be sent information on trauma-informed care. In addition to resources, a member of BEADS may reach out directly to the team to share any concerns or suggestions. We believe our collaborative approach to corrective action plans and incident reviews will help providers to develop processes that will result in quality services for all individuals. Today, we've outlined the current processes BEADS utilizes to process IRs, complaints, and mortality reviews. We will be reviewing the process and aligning them when needed with 455 Indiana Administrative Code for individuals on the TBI and the Health and Wellness Waiver. We look forward to partnering with all providers to ensure a smooth transition on July 1st. This brings us to the end of our presentation. And as always, we want to remind you of our mission to ensure that all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. Remember that we're all in this together. If you need additional information, you can contact us at the 800 number provided or reach out to the BEADS help desk at beads.help@fssa.in.gov. As always, this is a reminder for you to stay connected with the Indiana Bureau of Disability Services by signing up for the DDARS list served, and don't forget to follow the Indiana Bureau of Disability Services on Facebook. As we had discussed during the presentation, we did provide the additional resources that include the BEADS Quality Assurance website, links to 460 IAC6, as well as the CIH and the FS waiver. The next slide will also then have the Division of Aging information that we've discussed in the presentation. I just want to take this time to say thank you again to everybody for attending. Please remember you will receive a follow-up email from Zoom that will serve as your record of attendance today. There will also be a link for an evaluation that we ask that you do complete. I appreciate everybody attending. Kim, is there anything that we need to address now?
No, it doesn't look like it. We will have an FAQ after the 3 sessions, or I'm sorry, actually we have 4 sessions
Yes.
for this particular training. Sorry. So at the end of all 4, we will post an FAQ as well as the presentation. So I don't have any questions outstanding at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and we look forward to presenting to you in the future.